This is a lowland river in the heart of East Anglia, a classic part of the British countryside. This natural nature reserve is one of our most special and wild habitats, and one I can't wait to explore. In this series, I'm visiting some of Britain's most outstanding areas of natural beauty to explore the fascinating wildlife that has made these places their home. This is the beautiful River Wensum in Norfolk. It's a typical English river, a ribbon of wilderness that cuts straight through the heart of modern farmland. It's no surprise that, of course, there's going to be a lot of wildlife here. In fact, I've got a long tick list of things I'd like to see. I'm hoping to watch some kingfishers. I want to see what's happening to our water voles, and I'm going to investigate what's happening under the water, where our native crayfish is locked in combat with an alien invader. The picturesque River Wensum is one of a web of lowland rivers and streams that run through Norfolk in East Anglia. These chalk-fed rivers are exceptionally clear and support a thriving community of plants and creatures that live and feed in the water and the surrounding floodplains. Summer is the perfect time to explore the banks on foot. I love bridges. They give you the most amazing view of rivers. You realise that a river, of course, is a habitat of two environments, the underwater world and the above-water world. Here you can easily see the dragonflies and the bird life, but to see into the river can be difficult because of the shimmer of reflections at the surface. A really good tip is to always carry some polarising sunglasses or polarising lens for your camera so that you can see into the river. And then it's transformed, and you can see this incredible diversity of life and all the baby fish sheltering in the shallows. Wonderful. But this tranquil scene is vulnerable. Pollution from agriculture, land drainage, and urban sprawl has put pressure on this delicate ecosystem. Various agencies have been working together to ensure the Wensum remains clear and healthy. Without it, some of our rarest native creatures could be lost. One such animal that is particularly sensitive to pollution is the white-clawed crayfish. It's been thriving here, but it's facing a new threat from its larger, more aggressive American cousin, the signal crayfish. Martin Pugh is an expert on the species. How are you getting on, Martin?
Yeah, good actually.
What have you found?
I've just got lucky and found a pretty large male white-clawed crayfish.
Look at that. That's the true native.
It's really good to see. I mean, it's a fair-sized adult. Probably.
Hey, little devil. He's having a little
They
pinch.
do tend to
He's having
do
a
that.
little pinch, but that's all right. I don't mind. That's stunning. Beautiful. Very well camouflaged.
They definitely are. They're difficult to find in the riverbed. They blend in perfectly.
Yeah.
It's fantastic to see in this chalk river, and as you said, they're getting quite a rare sight. We know it's a white-clawed crayfish, first of all. It has got those pinky white, dirty white claws. They've also got a row of spines, little prickles on their carapace.
Just there?
Just their neck area. These row of spines actually mark them out as our native crayfish. Any of the non-natives won't have that distinctive feature.
But why are these so important? Because there may be people out there that think it's no bad thing if they disappear with the arrival of a larger crayfish that they can eat.
Well, white-clawed crayfish have been with us for a long time. They're the only native species in the UK from a total of 600-odd species worldwide, but they're the only species that's adapted to our river systems. And the young that emerge about this time of year, they're a fantastic food source for brown trout, for eels, other invertebrates, dragonfly larvae, for example. They've been here probably since post-glacial times, so Walter Raleigh is fabled to have introduced them to the River Yore in Yorkshire, but mainly they've spread naturally, and they're really a native part of our river systems. The exotic species that have come in the last 30, 40 years aren't in balance with our local rivers. They predate fish, they predate invertebrates and native crayfish where they occur.
Worst of all, our native crayfish is vulnerable to a deadly plague that's spread by the American invader.
So this is the villain of the piece. Well, straight away I can see that the underside of the claws here is very red. It's a beautiful colour.
They're really quite distinctive, particularly the adults.
So now we can identify the invader. What can people do to help?
The best thing to do really is to stop movement of American crayfish before they colonise the river system. The best way of doing that, of course, is to avoid introduction in the first place, leaving the crayfish where they are, not moving them from river to river or from a pond into a river system. It only takes a couple of crayfish to establish a population on a river system. There's unfortunately no known way of eradicating the American species once they're established, at which point there'd be no going back. The native would be inevitably replaced in 5 or in 10 years, and we'd come back in 20 years and only find this horrible invasive crayfish species. The less these things are moved around, the less chance they have of reclaiming the last precious white-clawed crayfish sites we have in the country.
Beautiful brown trout. The fish with a very good view out of the water. Crawling up onto a riverbank like this is a really good way to see what's there. It's wonderful. I could spend hours doing this. See what I mean?
The River Wensum gets its name from the Anglo-Saxon word for winding. Its gentle curves reveal a wealth of wildlife.
I really find rivers exciting places because of all the plants that grow here. This one here that looks like a stinging nettle, this is gypsywort. People used to use this to make a black dye. It was a very reliable black dye. In fact, sometimes gypsy folk, hence gypsywort, used to dye their skin really dark to pretend to be ancient fortune tellers from the East. Fascinating plant. But there are also plants here with other uses. This one here is a plant that's often mistaken for watercress because of the leaves. But this has got the lovely name of fool's watercress because it isn't watercress. But growing down there is the proper thing, and I'll show you that. You can see how similar they are, but the fool's watercress is a slightly toothed leaf compared to the real watercress. And this is, of course, very good eating. But if you are collecting wild plants for food, you have to be very careful, because growing all the way through this watercress is this very beautifully flowered plant, woody nightshade, and that is poisonous. But what I'm really interested in is this tight bend in the river.
Here the soft earth has been eroded by the flow of the water to form a steep riverbank.
And what that does is it creates a little cliff. And that is perfect for kingfishers. And that's a kingfisher's nest site. And normally nearby you'll find a perch. Very often there are droppings on here, but you can see, if you look really carefully, there's some mud deposited on there, just here, and it's a bit shinier. That's where the birds are landing.
The slow-flowing water here is the perfect habitat for kingfishers to catch sticklebacks and minnows. Here in East Anglia, the population has been hit hard by the last 2 cold winters, but I'm hoping with a bit of luck I may catch a flash of that telltale blue.
Have to keep very quiet and still in the height. Kingfishers are very, very nervous when they're close to a nest site, and it can be a long wait. You can sometimes call a kingfisher up by mimicking their call. That's the first kingfisher I've seen this year. It's a male bird, you can tell, because both parts of the bill are dark. In the female, the lower part of the mandible is orange. It's really lovely. They're such beautiful birds and really well named kingfisher.
I've come to Norfolk to explore the beautiful lowland rivers of East Anglia. Meandering through rural farmland, these small arteries of clear water simply teem with life, as do their neighbouring floodplains, areas of land flattened by overspill from the rivers that have their own specialised ecology.
There's a scene to inspire an artist. This is a traditional flood meadow. It's never been ploughed. The river's running just along the edge here, and these are traditional English longhorn cattle. They're really beautiful. They're part of the landscape, and of course they're here to help manage it and keep these meadows open and functioning. It's a wonderful sight.
As the cattle trample the ground, they create micro-habitats for a wealth of invertebrates, and the low-level grazing helps maintain a diversity of beautiful plants.
You don't have to be an expert in botany to realise that these unspoiled flood meadows are absolutely rich in wild flowers. Just within arm's reach, I've got all sorts of species, from the southern marsh orchids, absolutely at their best, standing up like mauve soldiers here. Yellow rattle, bird's foot trefoil, there's ragged robin, meadow sweet, there are horsetails. There's so much just within arm's reach. This is exactly what a flood meadow should be like. And associated with every one of these flowers, there's a different insect.
A ringlet butterfly feasts on orchid nectar, while this ladybird scales the heights of a stem of wild grass.
With all these insects in here, it's no surprise that there are also little amphibians like this little fellow here, trying to get an easy meal. Isn't he cute? But of course, that doesn't come without risk, because he in turn can be food for birds of prey like the marsh harrier that also come down into these meadows looking for a quick meal. Oh, I didn't like the sound of that. Off you go. Go and find some insects.
The river and surrounding habitat provide a smorgasbord of delicacies, attracting over 80 breeding and visiting bird species. I've met up with wardens Sophie Barker and Gary Elton at Pensthorpe Nature Reserve. They specialise in bird netting to monitor which birds are passing through the area. This highly skilled task requires at least 2 years' training and a special licence.
What have you got, Sophie?
This is a male common whitethroat.
Gosh, they're well tangled, aren't they?
Yeah, so generally going in a particular order, so they normally get their head through a loop of net first, and then each wing, and then each foot. So you have to take the bird out in the reverse order to the way that it went in. It's like a very complex three-dimensional puzzle, but it's all about understanding the structure of the bird and how to handle it properly.
And these nets, though, of course, they're designed to hold the bird without harming it.
Absolutely, yes. The loose shelf acts to slow the bird down as it arrives in the net, and then it just holds it there until it can safely be removed.
Like sitting in a hammock.
Yeah.
Gary and Sophie keep a careful log of each bird's details.
This is an adult bird. Having a look at the tips of the flight feathers. In the adults always start showing signs of wear during the course of the summer. Okay, wing length is 66.
It's an undignified way to weigh it.
It is. Okay, that's 11.1. So all we need to do now is release the bird.
With one bird recorded, Gary and I check the second net.
Right, we have another bird. And, yep, it looks like a reed warbler.
In amongst the reeds.
Yep. Got the bag?
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Gary, am I right in saying there are only 3 places in Norfolk carrying out this kind of survey?
Yeah, that's right. There's 3 in Norfolk and approximately 120 throughout the country.
I'm particularly interested in the River Wensum. How important is that to your choice of location for survey?
Very important. The birds use the Wensum Valley as a passage, a safe passage when they're migrating, but more importantly, the reed bed-dwelling species is obviously very important, and a habitat that's largely declining everywhere else. Every year, you know, there are fluctuations in species, and we can see how species are affected each year and how the numbers rise and fall. The obvious one, as we're here in the River Wensum, is the kingfisher. The last 2 harsh winters have certainly played a significant part in the decline in numbers, and we hope that they'll recover.
Obviously, I've spent most of my life outdoors watching wildlife, and I've seen these actually quite dramatic fluctuations in species densities. It seems to me part of a natural order.
The way nature tends to catch up is the following year the weather will be better and the food source will be greater, so more of the young can successfully fledge, and so the species catches up from there.
One bird that has made a successful recovery from a drastic decline in its numbers is the mighty marsh harrier. Warden Nigel Middleton has brought me to Sculthorpe Moor to catch a glimpse of this wonderful wetland raptor.
There we go. Look at that.
There we are.
How old are these? Oh,
They're about 7 weeks old, these birds are now. There was 5 males in the nest and 1 female, so I don't know if there's brother and sister up there or 2 males, but a little bit of interaction, which is wonderful.
wow, great. Young acrobats. Look at
The
that.
young acrobats.
God. That's magic.
With a wingspan of up to 4 feet, this is the largest of the harriers. Its slow flight makes it easier for it to detect frogs and other prey as it quarters low over the ground.
Do those wing tags affect the way they fly?
No, Ray, they're very light. It's actually material that they use on the side of these big talk-line lorries, you know. Traditionally, a marsh harrier would be classed as a migrant bird, and they'd come in from southern Europe, from North Africa, West Africa. Over the last 10 years, more and more marsh harriers have been seen overwintering along the coasts. And the idea of us putting these wing tags on these birds is so that we can see whether these birds actually go abroad, whether they travel further.
Yeah.
And we like to see whether any of these juveniles here return back to their natal site. Once they're perched, you can see the wing
And
tags.
it's the old game for the bird watchers at home. If they see a bird with the tags, to call it in.
Yes.
And then you know where they are. They're not too bothered by us, are they?
No. I must say, we're very privileged to be this close. Under normal circumstances, you wouldn't come to a nest.
No, absolutely not.
They're magnificent. They are like, I always liken the marsh harrier to the reed beds, like the golden eagle is to the mountains of Scotland, you know, marsh harrier and the Norfolk reed beds.
It's no doubt that the marsh harrier's recovery owes a lot to the work of conservationists. But there's one particular river creature that, despite efforts, is still very much under threat. I'm hoping to find sign here of the lovable water vole. Its population was decimated by the imported American mink, as well as pollution and a decline in the quality of habitat. It's now sadly thought to be Britain's fastest declining mammal. If I've got any chance of spotting one, the River Wensum should be the ideal place. Water voles look for clean and slow-moving waterways with steep banks in which they dig their burrows. If they're here, they're likely to be hiding in this bank of tall wetland grass, which they use as cover against predators, as well as a favourite nibble.
You can hear him.
A telltale rustle tells me I'm in luck.
That is wonderful. Water voles are so comical. I love watching them. And that was once a very common sight in Britain. But in the last 30 years, their population has declined by 94%. That's faster than black rhinos are being lost in Africa. It's a national disgrace. It's something that we must pay attention to. And what I think is really interesting is an animal like this is great fun to watch, but they're also a litmus. They tell us about the environment and what we're doing to it. And of course, we depend upon nature and a healthy environment as much as they do.